Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, The Medieval Reader. So today I want to talk about Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the third book in the Harry Potter series. I am rereading the Harry Potter series as an adult. I haven't read the series in years, and I am through the third book, and I will probably start the fourth book in January. When I read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban as a child, it was my least favorite book. Which is surprising because I know that for many people it's their favorite book. But I found it pretty boring. It wasn't as action-packed as the first book, for example. At least, that's what I remember. But upon rereading it, I was surprised by how action-packed it really is. And actually, I gave this book 4.5 stars, whereas I gave 4 stars to the first book, and 3 stars to the second book. I thought that this book was nearly perfect. But I say nearly because there is one detail that I'm going to get to in a moment that I found a bit problematic. Now, if you have not read the series, you probably should click away because I'm going to spoil it for you. I really want to be able to talk about this book. I assume that people who are watching this video have already read the entire series. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban begins where it always begins, in the Dursleys' house. And I don't really care much for the Dursleys. I find them to be just very much like the Malfoys in their own way. They're just very caricatured, and there isn't a lot of complexity in their characters. I didn't care a lot for the beginning of the story. It was funny, but I was really waiting for Harry to get to Hogwarts. And once he was at Hogwarts, though, the classes were really interesting. Snape was disgustingly rude as always. Professor Lupin, by the way, his name, Lupin, it kind of gives away what his animorgy is. We kind of know in advance that he's a werewolf, or at least some kind of a wolf. I only noticed this now that I've taken a few semesters of Latin. I was like, oh yeah. And Sirius Black, I think of like this constellation Sirius, which is a dog. So, okay, I see what his animorgy is. So I thought that was funny. But Professor Lupin is probably now my favorite professor. He is very complicated, first because he is a werewolf, but also just how he interacts with Harry, how you know that he has a mischievous past, that he was James Potter's friend, and it's really in this book where we're introduced to the major players in Harry's life. We're introduced to the friendship between James Potter and Lupin, and Sirius Black, and Peter Pettigrew. I thought that was the most interesting, even though when I was a child, the Shrieking Shack scene really bored me. For some reason, I thought that that was the most interesting scene, is certainly the climax of this book, when we learned that there was a traitor who gave away Lily and James Potter to Voldemort. I feel for Peter Pettigrew because I imagine that he was tortured, and I can't imagine what I would do in that situation. I can understand Harry's anger and first his inability to believe that Sirius is innocent. I feel for Snape as well, because you can see that Snape was bullied by the James Potter gang. But at the same time, Snape should act the adult in the room, and he never does. It's really disgusting how he was so excited that Sirius Black was going to get the kiss of death from the Dementor. I mean, does he just refuse to believe that Sirius is innocent? Is it because he almost got killed by the Whomping Willow when he was a child? And now he wants to take revenge? I mean, is that the kind of revenge that anybody deserves, to be killed? I don't know. It's just, it was outrageous how Snape responded to Sirius, and how he refused to believe that Sirius was innocent. I thought that was just crazy. But there are people like that. There are people like Snape who have had so much childhood trauma that they can't let go of the past, or they can't be reasonable in the way that they judge the present. And I'm not saying that he needs to necessarily forgive everybody. It's just that he does not behave like a professor. He does not behave even as an adult in the book, and it's crazy. What I also like about Peter Pettigrew is how he's presented as a character similar to Neville Longbottom. What I mean is that he is the quote-unquote loser. He is this character who was never the top of his class. He was never really in the in-group. He always felt left out. He always felt like he wasn't good enough. And, you see this with Neville in the book. And I think that's deliberate. I think Rowling is trying to show how Neville has all of the characteristics of Peter Pettigrew, and that he could potentially become a traitor. That, he could become someone who will betray his friends. And of course we know that that isn't what's going to happen. But I really like that touch. I really liked how similar Peter Pettigrew is to Neville, because it really gets you thinking about what makes a person go bad, what makes a person betray someone. I also really liked Hermione. Hermione, for the first time, is quite a flawed character, and flawed in a good way. I think that the way that she responded to Professor Trelawney was on point. I love how she just stormed out of the classroom. I love how she gets stressed out that she's taking too many classes. I really thought that was a nice touch, because so far we've seen a nearly flawless Hermione, and now we get someone more complicated, someone I could relate to very much. So I really like that detail. But the one thing that I don't understand is how the Dementors cannot sense the feelings of the Animorgii. It just feels too simple. So Sirius Black transformed into a dog and escaped from Azkaban prison. So you have these Dementors, who really represent the worst of the criminal justice system, who have to sense feelings so that they can then suck out all happiness. Sirius is able to transform into a dog, and so he escapes. I'm thinking, okay, if we know that all Animorgii are supposed to voluntarily report themselves to the Ministry of Magic, clearly criminals aren't going to do that. We also know that it is possible to learn how to transform into an Animorgii. In Lupin's case, he was bitten, but his friends learned over 3 years, and they were children, okay? I mean, we know that Harry Potter here is 13 years old, so children can learn, because James Potter was probably maybe 15, learn how to transform into animals. So criminals could just learn how to transform into animals, get themselves arrested, or get arrested after committing crimes. They're put in Azkaban prison. They could just transform into animals and escape. You would think that the Dementors would have the ability to sense the emotions of Animorgii, because I'm sure it's more common than people think. I don't know. I just thought that was weird, especially after Peter Pettigrew was exposed. They were going to send him off to Azkaban prison. And I'm like, it wouldn't work. You just transform into a rat and escape. Anyway, I thought that was a little bit of a cop-out. And that's the reason why I gave it 4.5 stars. But I really, really enjoyed this book. It was incredibly fast-paced. It was much darker than the other 2 books. And we are finally entering into the James Potter drama. We also are introduced to Harry's Patronus, which is a beautiful stag, and I love that. Hagrid, of course, is quite the gamekeeper. He's constantly into outrageous animals, although the hippogriff is so sweet. And I thought that the end with the Time Turner was an interesting meditation on time, and what would happen if we were able to go back in time and change something? What should we change? What shouldn't we change? I really loved how Hermione stopped Harry from catching Peter Pettigrew and allowed the traitor to escape, and how difficult that must be ethically to allow a criminal to escape again. I thought that was a nice touch and added a lot of depth to this book. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban way more than I did the first time, and I look forward to continuing the series in January. Let me know what you guys all thought about this book. If you can tell me a little bit more about the Animorgii, about how you're able to reconcile wizards' abilities to transform into animals with the Dementors and the whole prison system, please let me know, because it just felt weird that the Dementors would not have this ability, especially when we know that people can learn how to transform into animals. And any other thoughts you may have about Prisoner of Azkaban. And I will talk to you later. Bye now.